disaster in real time. Put out the fire. Ooh, put out the fire. Metafoodians rise. This is your power. And here in India, one truth stands the same. Milk is not just milk. Dairy feeds the flame. Cows and methane. Fields and forests turn to grain. Politics, culture, carbon, all wired to the same chain. Every cup of curd is heat in the air. Every block of butter is a forest repair. It's not a small habit, it's a planetary affair. Put out the fire. Put out the fire. Echoes and rise. This is our hour. Energy fixes half the hurt. Dr. Rao made that clear. But food fixes the other half, the half that's burning here. Change the plate, change the land, change the future's atmosphere. Put out the fire. Put out the fire. Metafoodians unite. This is your choir. Every millet, every fruit, every sapseed, every bean is water on the wildfire of a world we've never seen. Every oil-free bite is a river turning clean. This is not perfection, it's direction. Not pressure, but protection. A week of choices can cool a generation. A company's courage can ignite a nation. Put out the fire. Ooh, put out the fire. Echoes and rise. This is your hour. Metafoodians unite. Metafoodians ignite. Sharing love in the meta zone. Light in the path to a cooler home. Put out the fire. Ooh, put out the fire. Together we rise. Together we inspire.
Welcome to the Planet B podcast, where truth, transformation, and faith converge. Join us as we flip the script on ecological despair, guided by Dr. Sailesh Rao's vision for a compassionate, rewilded vegan world. Let's begin the journey to the greatest transformation in human history.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Planet B podcast. Today, we'll be taking a deep dive into the animal agriculture position paper. Dr. Rao, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. It's been, we are halfway through, and it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah, it's been great. I've learned so much. I hope that our audience has as well. And today is really getting into like the nuts and bolts of where all of the data behind this new Planet B system has come from. So, Dr. Rao, if you don't mind, let's begin with your opening quote for chapter 16.
Yeah, it's a quote from Mahatma Gandhi saying, even if you're a minority of one, the truth is the truth. And I remember, this paper came about because Jane Wells Mitchell asked me to write it. She asked me to write it in 2019, and I had all the information already and processed in my mind, and I just had to put it all down because I had been analyzing the data in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Fifth Assessment Report. So that's what the paper was based on. And once I finished writing it, I had this number 87%. And Jane said, "Oh, that seems too high." And is there a range? You should put a range on this. And I said, "Well, if you want a range, I can say it's at least 87%. That's all I can do because it's greater than that." Because I started off with Goodland and Annang's paper, which had at least 51%. And to that, I added opportunity cost, and that's how I came up with 87%. So it is, in that sense, a minority position because no one was in that range. Everyone was talking about 14%, 18%, and the IPCC had said 24%, but the IPCC was calculating based on a different criteria. So I say there are two questions about animal agriculture or any sector. First question is, how much is that sector contributing to annual emissions? So that's the first question A. And question B is, how much is that sector contributing to the heating that you are experiencing today? That's question B. And so people get confused between these two questions, because some estimates are for question A and some estimates are for question B.
Right.
And the position paper was about question A, which is how much of the annual emissions today are caused by the animal agriculture sector. And I use an engineer's approach for calculating these, in which opportunity costs are automatically included. And opportunity cost is what would happen if you didn't have that sector and the resources of that sector were used for restoring or reducing the emissions. And when we do opportunity cost analysis in engineering, we assume that resource is being redeployed with reasonable effort.
Right.
Okay. And the main resource that gets freed up when we eliminate animal agriculture is the land that is being used for raising animals. And that is the number one use of land today,
Right.
among human activities. And therefore, that land has the potential to store an enormous amount of carbon on an annual basis. So that's what I was calculating as the opportunity cost. And I assume that if you were to use reasonable effort to bring back the forests, we should be able to sequester at least as much carbon as the animals are eating today.
Yeah, so I want to just write. So you made a statement on that in the book, and I'm just going to read it if you don't mind.
Sure.
It says, in the position paper, the opportunity cost of the land used for animal husbandry was calculated assuming that nature is able to sequester at least as much CO2 as that embedded in all the food that our farmed animals are consuming today when we are consciously restoring the ecosystems of the planet.
Correct. Yeah. The assumption is that animals don't eat underground, right? Our farmed animals. At least
Yeah.
last time I checked, they were all eating above ground vegetation. And the amount of food that they're eating has been calculated. So we have an estimate for that. And the food that animals are eating is basically hydrocarbon. Half of that food, roughly, is the carbon in the food. Okay, so you can then calculate how much carbon is there in the food that the animals are eating. And then from that carbon, you can translate it to carbon dioxide. How much carbon dioxide did the plant sequester to make that food? Okay. Now, when we are calculating opportunity cost, we are calculating how much CO2 is sequestered in regenerating forests where, no one is eating that and sending it back up because the animals are not there. Right? And so we assume that the forests are able to do as much as the plants are already doing today that the animals are eating. Okay,
All right.
we should be able to do more than that, surely, because we have the wherewithal to help plants grow faster, right? So whatever it is, I mean, we don't have to grow grass; we can grow trees instead. I assume that we should be able to do at least as much as what the animals are eating, and then you calculate, once you calculate how much CO2 is there in the food that the animals are eating, and assume that that's happening above ground, then the same amount or double will be sequestered below ground.
In the root systems, correct?
The same amount will be sequestered in the root systems, plus the same amount will be sequestered in the soil. So that makes it double.
Ah, wow. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
So it basically gets roughly tripled, right? On average, over time, it'll get tripled. So I say we have to calculate that, then that will be the opportunity cost. That's what we are missing every time we eat animals. So every time we eat animals, we are making the choice that we do not want that sequestration to happen. We'd rather eat the animals instead. That's a huge component, which is not there in the fossil fuel industry, because fossil fuels don't sequester anything. You're digging
Right.
from
So
underground and you're burning it, right?
So if you don't mind, I'd just like to go back then to a statement you made right at the beginning where you said foundational myth on planet A, fossil fuel use is the leading cause of climate change. And then foundational truth on planet B, animal husbandry is the leading cause of climate change, while stopping fossil fuel use is now suicidal. So
Correct.
we've talked a little bit about that, but just please revisit that once again, because it's just so important.
Yeah, stopping fossil fuel use now is immediately is suicidal. You have to do it gradually. Which, by the way, when the fossil fuel activists are calling for reduction in fossil fuels or elimination of fossil fuels, people are talking about 30-year time frame or 20-year time frame to reduce fossil fuel use to zero, right? Which, by my calculations, are the optimum time frame. Okay, so meaning they should continue their activity. What they're doing is fine, and they should, hold people's feet to the fire to reduce fossil fuel use over time, over the next 30 years. But you have to go vegan as quickly as possible. You have to restore the ecosystems of the planet as quickly as possible. And that is what is missing in the discourse when you miscalculate the true contribution of animal agriculture. Okay? Not only to emissions, but also to the warming that we are experiencing on the planet today. And so Jared Bishop's work has to do with the warming that the planet is experiencing today, whereas my position paper was about the emissions that are happening as of 2009, because
Right.
the data was not updated since then. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't know. The FAO's data, I don't trust it at all.
And
You
why
know,
is that? Why don't you trust that data?
because the FAO's data, the original data they did in 2006 in the Livestock's Long Shadow report, and Goodland and Hanhang took that report and they fixed it and they updated the data that was there. But their report came out in 2009. Okay. Then the FAO and Goodland and Hanhang had a debate about that paper, and the FAO then went and formed a partnership with the livestock industry. So they have formed a partnership with the International Meat Secretariat, International Dairy Federation, the International Poultry Council, and the International Egg Commission. These were the 5 founding members of the Livestock Environmental Assessment and Performance Partnership, the LEAP partnership. So the 5 founding members were the UNFAO and these 4 industry organizations. Okay.
Dr. Rao, that seems like those could tip the numbers just slightly.
Yeah. So then they revised their 2006 paper and they reduced the numbers, even though
Oh,
Goodland and
geez.
Hanhang had said it is actually greater. Okay. Goodland and Hanhang had found all kinds of emissions that they did not count in the FAO report. So then the FAO went and revised it down So they're saying, yeah, the debate happened about Gullar and Nanang's paper, and we lost the debate. In fact, the editor of the journal invited the FAO scientists to continue the debate, and they declined to continue the debate. Basically, they lost the debate. Okay. After losing the debate, they deliberately went and reduced it. And then they're updating that. And I'm saying, oh, how would I believe anything that comes out of the FAO now? You know, because it is completely in the hands of industry. So my estimate was based on 2009 numbers that Goodler and Hanhung had fixed from the FAO. Now, I don't have the original data. Goodler and Hanhung were part of the World Bank. Okay, so they have access to this data. And then they got suppressed. I mean, Goodland was already outside the World Bank. So he had just retired from the World Bank. But he was a high-ranking official at the World Bank, so he had access to some of that data. And Anhang, he still works for the International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank group. So he has access to the data, but he has told me that he was not going to do any more work on this. He's been told he cannot do any more work on this.
He's been silenced.
Absolutely. Okay. So my data is valid as of 2009. That's it. I haven't updated it. This is why I used human population numbers from 2009. I used everything from 2009 in my calculations.
Right.
Because I need to be consistent. If I start with 2009 data, I cannot mix it with 2019 data. So I used population numbers from 2009. I used food production estimates from the IPCC, which was, I think, based on earlier than 2009. So it's at least, this is why I said it's at least 87%.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the stronger figure in a minute. But so in terms of the this data manipulation, so in chapter 16, you stated that your approach differs from the UN IPCC's because the UN IPCC uses net accounting for land use change emissions, whereby emissions from land that get deforested is offset with regrowth on managed or abandoned land. Can you share a little bit about what that means?
So what the IPCC does is because they're trying to compare fossil fuel emissions, which they claim is new carbon that's being added to the atmosphere, and land use emissions. These are the two main sources of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. Now, when you deforest land and you burn the forests, when you burn the trees, they basically CO2 goes up into the air. Okay? And when you burn fossil fuels, CO2 goes up in the air. Now, as far as the atmosphere is concerned, it's just CO2. Everything is CO2 being burnt and sent up into the air. It then sequesters a whole bunch of that CO2 back on ground. So nature has this healing process, okay, of trying to undo the damage that we are doing. So when it sees a whole bunch of extra CO2 coming into the atmosphere, it tries to sequester it. It actually is bulking up the trees. How amazing is nature, right? She's bulking up the trees, making them grow faster. Okay.
Wow.
To sequester the excess CO2. Okay. So of all the emissions that we are doing, roughly 90%, 80 to 90% is being sequestered. Now, so only 10 to 20%, it's like somewhere around 15% is staying in the atmosphere. Okay. Now, what the IPCC does is that they want to play favorites for the animal agriculture industry. Why? Because animal agriculture is the precious industry. You cannot touch it. If you touch it, the entire thing collapses in the system on planet A. Okay? So how do you protect that industry? Fossil fuels, you can argue, if you change it over to solar panels, you're still continuing the same planet A system. You just change the fuel for the planet A system. Whereas if you eliminate animal agriculture, the planet A system collapses. And you have to create a new system that does not use animals at all, and that's planet B. So
Right.
if your motivation is to preserve planet A and continue the economic growth story, you want to pin the blame on fossil fuels. So how do you do that? This is where the accounting conventions come in. So they're saying ultimately we know only 10 to 15% stays up in the atmosphere. So who cares how it is accounted for? Right? So
Yeah.
you take the animal agriculture's emissions and you discount it. You discount it by saying, you chop down 100 million acres of forest, but here you abandon 70 million acres of land that becomes desert. Right? So you just say, I only deforested 30 million acres because I abandoned 70 million acres.
Hmm.
So that's how they're reducing how much is accounted for animal agriculture. So they're reducing it and then saying that we only emitted, less CO2 and the atmosphere is only holding 45% of that, not 15% of that. Because you lowered the numbers.
All right.
So the airborne fraction becomes 45% instead of 15%. Otherwise, the atmosphere, as far as the atmosphere is concerned, it only increased by so much, which you can measure, right? So you cannot lie there, because people are measuring the CO2. They know exactly how much is being added to the atmosphere every year. But how much are we emitting into the atmosphere? That you can fudge because nature is
Right.
already compensating for it. And that's where the fudging is happening. That's only one of the fudging that happens in the IPCC's accounting. The IPCC's accounting conventions for reporting to policymakers. These conventions are, as far as the climate scientists are concerned, they're looking at only how much CO2 got added to the atmosphere. They don't care about this cycle, right?
Hmm.
This cycle is much, much bigger than the amount that's added to the atmosphere every year. Okay, there's a lot more CO2 because it's part of the respiration cycle. We are breathing out CO2. Human beings, animals are breathing out CO2. Vegetation is also decaying and putting CO2 into the atmosphere. And then CO2 through photosynthesis is being sequestered in plants. And plants die out every year. There are trees that drop their leaves every year. There is a huge carbon cycle.
Right.
Okay, that's separate from what we are doing as human beings. So we are just, we thought we are just adding a minor thing on the side, but it turns out it's accumulating in the atmosphere year after year after year, and it's having a big impact now. So to account for that impact, so they're trying to separate out the natural carbon cycle and then saying this is human contribution. But in the human contribution, they're putting their thumb on the scale on behalf of the animal agriculture industry in order to preserve planet A.
There's a cow in the room, Dr. Rao.
Yes, that's the cow in the room that we've been talking about it since 2019. Since that paper got, I published it on our website in 2019, and then we tried to get it published in peer-reviewed journals, in European journals, and they all did not want to even review it. And then I submitted it to a journal in India. The editors had asked me to come and give the keynote address. Since they had asked me to give the keynote address based on the paper, they had read the paper.
Right.
Right. So I gave the keynote address to the Ecological Society, and then I asked them if you would like to print the paper, and they said absolutely, we would love to print the paper. So they printed it as an invited paper because they had already reviewed it. So that got published in 2021 in the Journal of Ecological Society. And then Gerard's paper got published in 2025 in February. He is doing the same analysis, but for the amount of heating that we are experiencing on the planet caused by human activities. And he pointed out that it's 53% of the heating that we're experiencing today is caused by the animal agriculture sector.
I wrote some things down that you put in this chapter, and so vegetation eaten by animals, that's not counted. Cut down and burnt forests, that's not counted. Desertification that's caused by the land that cows are grazing on and the food that the animals are eating, the desertification on that land, that's not accounted for. Bottom trawling of the ocean, I believe, that's not accounted for as well.
Right, yeah. A lot of things that are not accounted for because there is a healing process already happening, right? So ultimately, you just have to account for the extra that got added to the atmosphere. Where did that come from? Okay. And that's why they could fudge the rest. Okay. Because as far as the climate models are concerned, they're only concerned with how much got added. How much did the CO2 increase year by year in the atmosphere? But when you want to assign responsibility to sectors, you really have to look at every human activity. I'm claiming in this chapter and in my paper that humans have to take responsibility for all of our actions.
Right.
Okay. So you emit CO2 by burning forests, you're responsible for all the CO2 that you emitted when you burned down that forest. You do not get to take credit for photosynthesis. We didn't do it. Okay.
Can you go a little bit into detail with that? Because it's so important. Could you just share a little bit more detail with that statement, please?
Yeah. When we say, offset this emissions with the land we abandoned, okay, what are we saying? We are basically saying the nature will restore forests on that land that we abandoned, and we are going to preemptively take credit for it, even before nature did it.
That's so silly. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's really what's going on. It's to me, as from an engineering perspective, it is so absurd. I told people if anyone had done this to me when I was working on the internet, I would have thrown them out the window. So, because you're trying to ruin my work, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and this kind of accounting convention is trying to distract me, and tell me to look at something else, when the major issue is right there in front of my face, right? So we don't get to take credit for photosynthesis. That's something that we all have to agree on this. Okay, you don't get to take credit for photosynthesis. You're responsible for emissions. That's it. You're not responsible for the plant growing. We didn't do that. Nature did it. So I think we have to have humility, and then based on that, we need to figure out, okay, where can we reduce our emissions?
Yeah.
Right. And when you do that, you get to numbers that I'm coming up with.
So let's talk about
Sorry.
the newest numbers. So you were at 87% based on data from 2009, and then
Right.
now the UN IPCC has put out a sixth assessment report that was issued in 2021, and now you've updated that 87% figure to 118%.
Right, yeah. Because in the fifth assessment report, they had a range for how much carbon is sequestered in soil, okay, compared to how much carbon is in the vegetation. Vegetation carbon we can measure, right? We can measure the weight of trees. There are good metrics for doing that, right? Whereas soil carbon was harder because it depends on the depth to which you go and so on. And so in the fifth assessment report, they had a range. And based on that range, I took the minimum of the range in order to come up with my lower bound. And I said, the same amount of CO2 that is stored in the root systems will also be stored in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I can take the above ground CO2 sequestration and triple it. I mean, you add one more for the roots and one more for the soil. Okay.
Right.
Now, in the sixth assessment report, they had better numbers for CO2 that's stored in the soil, and they said it's actually 2.4 times what's in
So
above
it's
ground.
higher. It's
It's
higher
higher.
than initially. Yeah.
Yeah, it's higher. And so I said, well, I mean, and they didn't even give a number, a range. They just said it's the total is 3.4 times. I said, okay, if you're sure about that, I'm happy to take that number. And that 87% becomes 118% when you do that. Now, with the Gerard Bishop's estimate also, his estimate is 52% of the heating today is caused by animal agriculture. Okay. And he did not include the opportunity cost of the land. So meaning, if you eliminate animal agriculture overnight and you restore all of the forests that used to be there at equilibrium, okay, that's what the carbon opportunity cost would be for the cumulative estimate that he's doing. Because he's doing a cumulative estimate of all the emissions that happened over the last 200 years. Because that's what's causing the heating today. Okay. So when you do opportunity cost now, you have to say, what would happen to the heating if he didn't have an animal agriculture industry? And that means you have to now look at all the land and return to forests at equilibrium. That's what it would be. And the estimate we're coming up is more than 118%. It's more like 130%.
Oh my goodness.
Because he did not include that opportunity cost. Because it was harder, So, yeah. The statement I'm making with 118% is that if you were to wave a magic wand and eliminate the animal agriculture industry overnight, okay, we will see the CO2 level in the atmosphere reduce year by year, even though we are still burning fossil fuels.
Right.
At the current rate. Okay. Why is that? Because the vegetation will sequester that. Whatever you're burning from fossil fuels, it will sequester that as well. Right?
Right.
And store it. Provided we are engaged in restoring the forests.
Right.
Okay. So it's a good news story. Okay. The good news is
Really
that,
good news. Really good news.
You don't have to, eliminate the fossil fuel industry overnight. You can eliminate it slowly. And in the next chapter, I'll go into why you need to eliminate it slowly. You cannot do it right away.
Yeah.
That's the climate bathtub model thing. But but that's what that number is. And the other number, that 130% that we are saying about animal agriculture industries' contribution to heating today, what that means is that by eliminating animal agriculture and restoring the forests, we can bring back the temperature to what it was 200 years ago.
Right.
That's what that's saying. It's greater than 100%. You can bring it back. Okay.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. But here's what will happen. As you bring it back to what was there 200 years ago, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere will come down. As the CO2 levels come down, the new trees that are born will not bulk up as much as the old trees who were born when the CO2 levels were much higher. Okay? So, meaning temporarily you can bring it down, but then as the old trees die out and new trees are born, you'll slowly reduce the amount of CO2 that's stored on land.
Wow.
So there will be some, there'll be some feedback loops that it's not there in the calculations that we are doing.
Yeah.
Right? And eventually there'll be some equilibrium that we will reach. Right? But the good news is that nature is telling us, look, I'm still capable of healing. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So it gives
So
me
beautiful.
tremendous faith that this is part of a larger process. I mean, these things we didn't know it was going to happen, right? We were just burning down forest. And
Right.
we didn't expect nature to be bulking up the remaining trees to undo the damage that we have done. But that's what she's done.
Defending
Now,
herself, essentially.
right, defending us from our own stupidity.
Yeah,
Well, our
defending
own
us, not
actions.
just yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but at some point she's going to quit, right? Because any system, if you keep stressing it, at some point she's going to say, I'm done. You know? And we don't want to get there, right? When systems collapse. But we are stressing the systems already. But so far, the systems are holding up.
Dr.
I
Rao,
mean,
towards the oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
no, I was saying, who would have expected that even though we cut down half the trees on the planet, the remaining trees would bulk up and store just as much carbon as all the other trees used to? Who would have
Right.
expected that, right? Now, will that last if you cut it down to just one last tree remaining? Of course it won't last. That tree is not going to store as much carbon as 3 trillion trees. Okay, no matter how how big you make that tree. So this is why at some point this process, this feedback process is going to stop. And that's what the planetary boundaries are telling us, saying we are stressing it already to to the red zone. And so we need to stop thinking that you can keep chopping down trees, you can keep reducing the number of trees on the planet, and the remaining trees will bulk up
Right.
to take the heat, right? It's not going to do that. At some point it's going to stop.
Yeah. So, Dr. Rao, what's in chapter 16, you mentioned that even when humanity goes vegan, which it will, humans
Mhm.
will still need to intervene to help restore the original ecosystems.
Yeah.
What does that intervention look like to you?
Well, there are a lot of places where the deserts have taken over. Okay, so we have created this feedback loop that's desertifying the planet over and over, and you cannot expect the seeds that are in the ground to bloom when you don't have soil
Right.
to help it bloom. So you have to there are a lot of places where you have to restore the soil first. Okay, so you have to create water retention structures because it's desertified, and then you have to plant trees. You have to basically maybe bring some soil from somewhere else and seed it, and then the plants that grow will drop their leaves and create more soil, over time. So it's that there are places where we have to intervene, and we already know that. Like, you cannot just abandon the Sahara and expect it to become a forest again.
Right.
Yeah, you have to intervene to turn the Sahara into a forest. And so there are a lot of places where humans need to intervene, but there are a lot of places where humans don't have to intervene, and they're usually the places where we just deforested. So there's a process that happens. You deforest, or you cut down a mangrove or whatever, and you remove the native ecosystem in a region, and then you plant grass for our cows to eat. Okay, or so the way they do that is the grass is already growing there. There's already grass everywhere, and the cows are eating that. And whatever the cows don't eat, or whatever the cows and the goats and the sheep that we have on the land don't eat, we chop it every year. We chop those plants and we burn them. And this is known as pasture maintenance fires.
Hmm.
Okay, this is how we maintain pastures on Earth. Okay, and so when we burn that, we emit CO2. Okay, and the amount of land we burn to maintain pastures today is the area of India every
Wow.
year.
Every
Okay,
year.
every year. We burn an area the size of India every year to maintain pastures. Now, On that land, if you didn't have the animals, the forest will come back.
Right.
That's why you're chopping and burning.
Wow.
Right. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And now there are other places where we have deforested and then we have been pouring Roundup. This is the weed killer that kills anything that grows in the ground, except for the Roundup ready crops that we plant.
Right.
So converting forests into cropland is about growing GMO crops like that. That's what we do.
Yeah. So Dr. Rao, as we round up this, the final aspect of chapter 16, no pun intended, sadly. How do we get this message out? So this is, I think, the greatest message of our time, because number one, there is a solution, a very, very simple solution. And it's an exciting solution. It's easy to implement. And the data is all backing that now. So
Right.
your work, we from all of us who are in the movement, we really thank you for your work and your continued efforts to get the message out, because you've been doing this now for about 20 years, and now you're stronger than ever. So we thank you for that. But how, at this critical time, 2026, where we know 7 of 9 planetary boundaries have been transgressed, sadly, our planet is definitely not in the state that we want it to be in. How can we go out and spread this message as fast as we can?
You are doing it already. This is the way. We have to explain things so that people who are technical experts can understand. Engineers can understand what I'm saying, and they can go verify my data and say, yeah, this is the way engineering is done. Okay.
Right.
I'm just doing my job as an engineer, as a
Yeah.
systems engineer. And I don't, any engineer will know that if you do shenanigans with the accounting like this, you're not going to build anything that actually works. And that is not the right way to account for things. Okay. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't account like this. So I start with axioms, and so it's anyone can follow from first principles what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay? Any engineer. And so now we have to just spread the word. And these podcasts that we are doing, these episodes that we are doing, is the way to reach larger audiences. And then I'm going to go out and give more interviews and lectures and as much. I just say yes to everybody who asks me. That's my
Yes, I can validate that.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao, what about like us? Because like we're not science specialists. We don't. Most of us don't have connections with engineers. We're out interfacing with the general public. We know that there's a very, very low percentage of vegans currently, fully vegans in the world. So when we go and share this message in the public, what is your advice for us?
Yeah, just say that, it's the leading cause is animal agriculture, and this engineer is standing by this. He's been standing by this for the last 7 years, and he's not backing down, and he's pointing out that the people who are telling you it is not the leading cause are also the same kind of people who are telling you that protein is only found in meat, calcium is only found in milk, which are lies. We know that. So it's the same kind of system that we are in. The system is all about how do I manipulate things in order to gain advantage for myself. That's the kind of system we have created. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is if someone who's watching this podcast, they're maybe interfacing with a government official or a scientist or engineer, would you be open to a meeting with them or a conversation with them where they could potentially get in touch with you to connect you with this individual?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My email is there on my website, everything is there. So it's open source. Everything I do is open source. And so the book can be downloaded, the papers can be downloaded and read, and I'm happy to debate anybody. If anyone thinks there is something wrong with my paper, please tell me. Please tell me what it is, and I'll address it.
Awesome. So, Dr. Rao, any final message as we finish out episode 16?
Well, I go back to the initial quote. Even if you're a minority of one, the truth is the truth. So please shine the light on the truth.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for joining us. And coming up in episode 17 is the climate bathtub model, which really follows up on chapter 16. So we hope you all stay with us for our next episode 17. So thank you for joining us, and Planet B signing out.
This has been a podcast from Planet B, where plants aren't just side dishes. If you haven't moved here yet, we thank you for visiting.
Kan je dat wegdoen, wat in het midden staat?
Hello, Danny.
Hi, Dr. Rao. I just wanted to ask you, aside from animal agriculture, what is like the second largest reason for trees? Is it for home building?
Oh, for cutting
For
down
cutting
trees.
down trees, yeah.
Yeah, home building, there is a constant harvest. Not just home building, probably toilet paper. Paper is the
Right.
second one,
Right.
and then lumber. So that 22% of the land is used to just grow trees to be chopped up
Wow.
and turned into lumber and paper. Okay, so these are all
Okay.
managed forests. Yeah,
And remind me the figure that's for agriculture, for animal ag?
37%.
37,
is,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very
is
much.
grazing land for agriculture. Yes.
Thank you.
Brown?
Yeah. I fully agree with you that of your approach to that agriculture is a major cause of it. But I don't know if I share completely your optimism of that vegans will do it, because there's so much we have to do. In a sense, that's amazing. If you see how much damage we have already done by the increase in deserts and the
Right.
melting of the glaciers and the acidification of the oceans, it's a huge job which we have to, we need everybody, I guess, to
Correct,
work
correct.
on it. Do you have
Yeah.
any suggestions of how to incorporate that also, the seriousness of the conditions we are in?
Right.
It's,
See, it's a great question, because the seed of the answer is in your question. Because you're saying there's so much work to be done.
yeah.
There's so much that we have done. And simultaneously, people are saying, we are all losing jobs. We are all losing jobs because AI is taking away all our jobs. So, don't you have something to do? There is a planet to fix. So that's where all the jobs should be coming. That's where all our efforts should be going, as opposed to trying to extract for the rich, which is where the jobs are being lost.
Yeah.
Because the rich are saying, we don't need people anymore. Machines are doing all the work for us. Right? And they're saying, all of you starve to death. And I'm saying, no, I'm not going to starve to death. I'm going to grow food and restore the planet, and you guys can go to Mars. So, this is how we need to be turning this around. So the nature is a perfect system design. So as we get less and less jobs in the extraction model. She's offering more and more jobs in the restoration model.
So we changed the military to have to serve the earth.
Yes, exactly.
Fighting.
Why is the military going and trying to grab Greenland for fighting over Greenland? It's like, what happened to us? So there is this craziness going on over there, and the rest of us should figure out how to restore the planet instead, and say, no, what is that? I mean,
Yeah. So we need
yeah,
the Peace Corps and all those
exactly.
institutions. Yeah. So
Exactly, yeah. So
uh,
it's changing the objective function of civilization. Yeah, see, I mean, we're going to get into that later. I think chapter 29 is about the currency system.
mm,
The currency game is the fundamental game we are playing. And that game is making us do all these things. Like we are mindlessly going around doing these things because we are playing the game,
yeah,
right? So so in that sense, we have to change that fundamental game so that you change the objective function of civilization.
yeah.
It's not to extract from the planet and make somebody powerful. We have all the power we need. We have all the strength we need to solve our problems now. And it is just deploying it for this purpose of
So
restoring the planet.
we have to
Yeah.
give the people actually that there is a solution to
Mhm.
let them know that there is a solution because they're so discouraged and so it's
Right,
hopeless.
right.
We can't do anything, but we have to do
See,
so much.
in a way, we have found the solution for the questions that earlier generations were searching. Like Einstein was sending letters uh, to Sigmund Freud, and they were having discussions back. I'm reading all that. I'm saying, oh my God, we found it. They were looking for it. Because ultimately it's the purpose. You have to start with the purpose. What is the purpose of humanity? And now nature is saying, you think your purpose is to just have fun? No, you got work to do.
Yeah.
You have to work to stabilize this life support systems of the planet.
It's good what you pointed out that although we have done all these wrong things, we still have done something good and getting no glaciation. That
Right.
things were not very good, but we did.
Right. We did. Yeah.
So
We did.
how
Yeah.
do we change ourselves so much? It's a
Changing
person.
ourselves is about changing the game we play.
Yeah,
See, that's the key.
yeah,
If you are secure, you are actually when you create a system where everyone feels secure, then everyone feels generous.
yeah.
So generosity becomes the norm. If you create a system in which everyone is insecure, it's greed that's the norm.
Yeah,
Because you have to grab. If you don't grab, you're going to die.
yeah.
Right? So you have to create that environment in which fundamentally everyone feels secure. That's a systems issue.
Mm,
It's a systems issue. So I'm talking to some of my fellow engineers. I mean, we want to create this model and show people, look, if you really want to address hunger and create a healthy city, how would you do it? A
I think
hunger-less healthy city, right? So create something like that.
we need the women maybe to be more because it isn't
Yes.
who know how to do it.
Right.
Uh,
The women have to tell the men, hey, bring me the vegetables. That's it.
yeah, right.
It's our job to create the supply chains and all that to make that happen, the engineer's job to make that happen. So, yeah, you're right. The women have to be in charge.
Yeah, great. Thank you
The system.
very much.
Ray?
Dr. Rao, you're talking about the topic that I love to talk about a lot, which is the history of the science rather than the science itself. We spend so much time arguing with climate people about what is the science, what does the data say right now, Just look at the science at our feet, and it's like trying to figure out how to get up to the top of a mountain by looking at the ground in front of you rather than planning a route forward. And this is also, history is looking backwards. And you talk about opportunity costs, and it occurs to me that that is a topic of history.
Right.
It's what if we had done things differently? Or what if we now, going forward, do things that would accomplish the things if we had done it right the first time, if we had done the ecological pathway in the first place. So, and the scientific method itself, we talk about hard science, but biases aren't hard science. Biases are something you remove from it. And our biases in the climate community are all in the past. And you mentioned Goodland and Anhang, and that was my in to not just environmentalism, but veganism itself. It was to take some agency and understand the big picture of things rather than just listen what's been told to me or the prevailing narrative. So things like the establishment of the global warming potential, let's set it 100 years. That's a political decision. That's not a scientific decision. And there's a scientific framework. How do we determine the impact of methane? And then somebody goes, okay, we could do it like this, or we could do it like this. We could measure it over 20 years. We could measure it over 100 years. And if we measure it over 100 years, fossil fuels are the problem. Methane's less of an issue. Is that good? Everybody, show of hands? When it's a show of hands, it's politics.
Yeah.
And we need solutions. We need the science, but the science just lays that at our feet, and we have to decide what to do with it. So at first, it's a political framework, and then it's this history that I don't think anybody wants to talk about Goodland and Anhang. It's completely forgotten in the climate circles. Oh yeah, we debunked that a long time ago. Did you though? Or did you just let the FAO take over? And that is the biggest swindle of all. It's something that kind of happened by accident. I've studied this a lot. That the FAO is not a climate organization. Repeat, it is not a climate organization. Their motto is Fiat Panis, which is Latin for let there be bread. The environment doesn't eat bread. It's anthropocentric. This is how you feed the human race. It's a good motive. We all support getting everybody fed. But if that is your priority, that is your bias. And even after the Guardian was saying the FAO has been corrupted and actively suppressing agricultural solutions to climate change, it was in the Guardian article. You can look it up. What did the climate community say about that? Nothing. They didn't go, oh no, we've been swindled. They knew. That's what happens when somebody cries wolf. And then people are just like, no, there's no wolf. we know the story.
Right.
So I mean, I had so many questions about this session, but and you mentioned putting the thumb on the scale. That's the perfect metaphor for what's going on here. You have hard science, but you've been playing some soft science, and it aggravates me when people who are specialists in atmospheric scientists or even soil science start playing sociologists and saying, what is a message that we can present that isn't the truth, but it is palatable to people?
But as
One of
an
my other
engineer,
questions-
I'm used to this, Ray, because I'm used to scientists with bias, right? Because even in the internet arena, scientists they were paid by someone, they're trying to push their patterns, whatever it is. So everyone had their own agenda, right? But as engineers, we are trained to be objective, to look for the solution. Okay. So
and you're also supposed to be declaring your biases, right? If you have any conflicts of interest.
Absolutely.
You at least
Absolutely.
I'm part of
Right.
the plant-based treaty. As a vegan, I know everybody knows the vegan bias. Vegans want to save the animals. So if you're talking carbon, you're going, but you want to save the animals. So there's a bias there. But the distinction is everybody knows it. Everybody knows what the vegan bias is. What is the carnist bias? That's an invisible bias. And that's the most dangerous bias of all, the one that nobody knows you have, and even you may be completely blind to it. I'm making decisions because I eat meat and I can't be against it.
Right.
I have to be
But
against vegans fundamentally because I'm not.
no, it goes beyond that. Ultimately, engineers answer to nature. Why do I say that? Ultimately, we are responsible for the solutions that should work. We say this is going to work, it better work. If it doesn't work, they hold us responsible. So our feet is held to the fire. So which means we are answering to nature. We are the last body of scientists who are answering to nature, which means we have to debias everything before we build our solutions. And that's what I'm trained to do. So I'm looking at it saying, hey, they're putting their thumb on the scale. And if I take the thumb off, it's telling me to go vegan as quickly as possible. That their data is telling me to do that. It's not me making anything up.
And I'm wondering if it is a soft scientist that is going to need to solve this problem in the climate circles. Somebody like Dr. Melanie Joy, who coined the term carnism. Carnism is the bias in the, I mean, there's two biases. And the other one, the other question I had is, you were talking about the good news. When we were talking about the good news, there's good news. We have good news. We can solve the problem that everybody's anxious about if you'll overcome your bias that vegans are just untrustworthy people. There's no good news for the markets. Markets require marketing, right? And only urgency works. Only the bad news works for marketing. We have to solve this problem. We have to stop fossil fuels as fast as possible, and we cannot say anything else. We cannot say anything to the contrary. We don't know how to. We don't know how to accept good news because they've followed the wrong path for so long. There is no good news, and you haven't solved your marketing. You look to the marketing, to the engineers of markets. Markets are going to solve climate change. How's that working for you? So I'm hoping people watch these podcasts and find an antidote for their despair, because going to the COP summits is just a frustration.
Yeah.
There's other people. Thank you for your answers here.
Sadak.
Thank you so much for this clarity. In fact, today's session is very much important for specifically sustainability professionals who are more lean towards reporting part, and they usually tend to restrict themselves around the frameworks or the guidelines they have right now. What I feel is that there's a lot to be upgraded in that system. In fact, I had a question from for you. I was actually there's two factors. One is the supply chain, which usually lean towards the uh, to the development and and the process of the whole product line or the sectoral line. Usually the systems around sectors are more focused on supply chains, how they react with supply chains, but we usually miss the whole concept comes around the we usually miss value chains around it, how the organization or how the sector works around it. We just don't need to focus on how we source it, how we redistribute it, but how those aspects, the specifically how the product has been built, or how the whole system works. Should what do you think? Should we restrict ourselves to only supply chains, or should we I feel that we should move forward, we should focus on value chains, because the value
Absolutely.
chain actually reflects us the how things are behaving. If we build something, how the specifically around plant based sector, if we know that value chain is a very big favorable part on our side, but when we see animal focused industries, those industries only have a supply chain benefit. More than that, on value chain side, they don't have anything. They can report on that aspects, but it's obviously that is centered on to that only. But when we talk
Yeah.
about value chain, we know how effectively it impacts the whole pattern, but beyond that pattern also how the stakeholders have been impacted, planet has
Correct.
been impacted. I want
Correct.
to know your thoughts. Do you feel value chain should be one of the most priority to solve right now?
No, we basically we have to incorporate the value chains and the supply chains together. We have to incorporate the objective function of the SDGs, like zero hunger, good health and well-being, no poverty. All of that we need to incorporate in our objective functions when we design systems. Okay. So meaning this has to be a holistic effort in which you're not saying I only focus on this and therefore I don't care what happens to the rest. No, you have to look at, are you optimizing for the entire picture or are you doing a local optimization? Okay. When you optimize for the entire picture, the value chains, the supply chains are all together in one problem that you're trying to solve. Okay. So I'm asking for a systems level approach to things like world peace, planetary health, all of that. I'm asking for that to be engineered properly, as if you are trying to accomplish that objective. And hold people's feet to the fire if they don't accept, meet it. Okay. But we have to model these things. We have to figure out how to make it happen. And we have to look at the entire game we are playing, the money game. Everything has to be brought into the solution. And then I think we can actually solve this. Otherwise, wars are going to be always there. Okay. Because it's all about, how do I impose my will on somebody else? That's what a war is about, right? Right. Because they don't want to listen to me, so I have to impose my will on them, But that doesn't solve the overall problem.
Exactly.
So, yeah, to me, it's like, fighting over who gets to the bathroom first when the house is on fire. It's like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Right.
Talking from the spectrum, we should focus from the spectrum itself, how systems work, how systems thinking work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Basically, how all the aspects as a spectrum should work. Then we can.
Correct. Yeah.
That's why when we talk about 1.5 degrees, and people are leaning towards 2 day, we are getting a response for 2 degrees. It won't affect, because until or unless you are driving it across the spectrum, you won't get the results. One section
Right.
is working, is solving it. Another section is just reporting it. Both industries or both sectors or anything around that value chain has a contribution, has a handprint around it. We are just focusing on footprints, we are just focusing on carbon. We have to focus on the handprint aspect. What are the overall footprint of a program? The, like you said, we have to look out how the whole spectrum works. That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what's your view? I got it totally. And in fact, this is one of the very important session, I believe, because you have mentioned how the carbon dioxide has been recorded. Recording is reporting is one of the most misused part.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then we are building markets around that misuse.
It's very unfair.
Right. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank
Sarthak.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Toby?
Hello, Dr. Rao. It was fun editing that one. A lot of stuff to look up. I was talking with my auntie today, and I saw her a few months ago, and she's she's the on the side of where my grandfather got me into, like rewilding and stuff like that. Because he would offset the company that he worked for with planting trees on their land. So they'd offset the carbon and they'd save costs, which I think is quite an interesting thing to do. And why don't people do it properly? He did quite a good job. And anyway, so we have that mutual agreement that we like this idea, my auntie and I. So I messaged her some of the information that we talk about with climate healers, and she is regenerative agricultural perspective on this, rewilding idea. And so we were talking about carbon. She sent me a video, and the woman was talking, she's doing a TED talk talking about carbon and where it's mainly stored. And she says that it's mainly stored, which is true, in the soil. and then vegetation, which you see here from the, I don't know if it's actually in there properly. Oh, it's on the other side. Oh, it's here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's soil, isn't it? And then this is the vegetation.
Right.
But the carbon is stored in the soil because of photosynthesis, and that's where it started, right? And it got sucked down and stored in the soil. That's been doing
Right.
that for a very, very long time. So it sounds like
Right.
it was a bit confusing for people, saying all the soil stored in the ground, in the soil, the carbon stored in the soil, so that's all we need to worry about. But it's actually because of the plants that really that's happened. It
Right.
kind of jumps over and skips over. So I was trying to show this graph as well, but she says it's she didn't reply to that. But is that really why it's well, yeah, we talk about also that there's in the native woodlands, sorry, like ancient woodlands, old growth forests, for example, they store 90% of the carbon. So how does that work when it says that most of the carbon is stored in the soil, when that's only the smallest
Basically,
section?
see, if you look at that, there is 450 gigatons in vegetation there, right? And then there is 1700 in the soil. So of the 1700 in the soil, roughly 450 is root systems of the above ground vegetation. Okay. And the other 1250 is in the soil. Now, how did it get in the soil? Well, the vegetation dropped leaves. And then that carbon in the leaves became part of the soil. So bacteria are constantly, chewing anything that comes there and eating it and then turning it into soil. Okay? So that's the composting of vegetation that becomes soil.
Yeah.
Okay. Over time. So meaning when you see something above ground a year later, photosynthesis actually did a little bit more than that. The rest got into the soil and some of it went back up because it decayed and went back up. So there's this constant cycle. So this is why you see the golden arrows, like 101, 111, and 113. Those huge arrows going up. That's respiration and photosynthesis. Yes. That's much, much bigger than the fossil fuel. Okay. And then you see the other red arrows. That's human cost. That's 25 and 23. That's human cost. That's much bigger than even the fossil fuels. That's human cost on land. That's where we grow all the crops and then the crops die. And we take, we are saying we caused it because we poured all the fertilizers to make that happen. Okay? And that's human cost. And the red that's happening in the ocean, that's from all the runoff from the fertilizers. You see how big that is? That's 23 and 25.
Yeah.
That's over and above what natural cycle would have been doing. Natural cycle is the golden arrows. And the red arrows are the human addition to the natural cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the estimate, right?
So, isn't it?
Yeah. And so middle one is the small one. You see, they took all this big stuff and turned it into one small 1.6. Okay. As the contribution of agriculture. I think that's accounting shenanigans. That's not real.
I don't want you to look at the golden stuff, just the red stuff.
You have to look at the entire red stuff, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Because that's net accounting.
Net account. So if you do gross accounting, you have to look at the entire red stuff. All the reds are our responsibility, and you have to give credit. You don't put a red arrow coming down. That's not ours. That's nature overcoming our stupidity. Okay, so
right.
So you have to
they're claiming this arrow. They're claiming,
that red you shouldn't claim as red. I'm claiming that should be gold. So that's nature. Nature did the sequestration. Nature did the photosynthesis.
Right.
I say, imagine, okay, suddenly photosynthesis stops working and you're pouring all this red, all these chemicals, and nothing happens to the ground. Okay. Who are you going to blame? Blame human beings for that? No. I mean, because we are claiming that photosynthesis is ours, we are thinking that we are the ones who made that plant grow faster.
Through fertilizing,
Right? Through the
um,
fertilizer and so on, right? But at
CO2
some
as well.
point, the fertilizers stop working. And then we say that land is fallow. And then we go and deforest some other land and do the same thing there. I said, that's not, it's not the land is fallow. The land is, this photosynthesis is trying to compensate for your stupidity. And eventually she gives up, saying, you keep doing this, my soil is going to die. See, when we add fertilizer to soil and we grow things faster and faster, what are we doing? We are mining the soil as quickly as possible. You're mining all the nutrients in the soil, and then there's nothing more to mine. Then you call it fallow and you move on.
So I was looking at some of the stuff she was sending me, my auntie, and she was one where it was saying they have a quote which is it's not the how, it's the how, not the cow. That's what they. So
Yeah.
when I was saying, like, you can't.
No, I say it's the cow. Don't even think about pretending it's the how.
You can't breed these creatures to be more efficient at converting these nutrients into flesh. There's no way of doing that.
Right. I'm gonna have Viga say that. He's gonna say it's absolutely the cow. Don't even think about pretending it's the how.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Because
Right.
they're really good at making these little catchy phrases.
Right. No, I'm not saying don't kill I'm not saying kill all the cows and go vegan. I'm saying don't rape the cows, you idiot. Don't stick your hand in there. Right? That's
Yeah.
number one. And the rest happens by its own, right? On its own.
Yeah.
So stop interfering with nature, thinking that, oh, we brought calves into the world. No, you didn't. Nature did.
Yeah.
You're just sticking your hand in there. Anyway.
There's another thing. I've not managed to get a number off you from. I want to see if you have an idea of like a ballpark range of a number of population of humanity that it takes to to go vegan, to flip it over. Because I've heard you say about like 2 to 3% of the population.
Yeah, we are already very close to that. That's why they did a full court press to suppress the vegan movement starting in 2019. They've been doing a complete full court press to suppress the vegan movement since then. But they're bottling up a volcano because they did not address the root causes for why people were going vegan. They did not address the ethical issues. They did not address the health issues. They did not address the environmental issues. Everything has gotten worse. So the reasons to go vegan are getting bigger and bigger. And they're sitting on it, preventing people. They're trying to deceive people into continuing this carnist way of living. They're going on the other direction. They're telling people, eat just meat, don't eat vegetables. That's the carnivore diet, right? So by doing that, they are basically sitting on a volcano. So that is going to cause, I think this exponential growth is going to be, it's not going to be like anything else that you have seen before. It's at one point we're going to say we are sick and tired of this whole damn thing, and we are going to go full on, with the system transformation that we need.
So, did you say around about 2 to 3% of the population is
We are
only
already
needed.
at 3%. We're already at 3%, which is why they're sitting
Right.
on the lid. Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
to 4 would create that explosion.
It is. We're ready to explode. 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We have no choice but to do it. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to have Greenland invasion and things like that as normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can expect all kinds of pathologies happening in human civilization.
Thank you.
Sure. Bram?
Yeah, I would like to set the record straight in a sense about scientists. I think they are wanting to get to the truth of things, so they are working very hard. And it shows actually in the IPCC report that the numbers you used gave the truth.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's good or bad scientists. That's true. Like that.
It's just the coloring. Just the coloring. Yeah. If
Okay.
the data is there, I said, why are you making that arrow red? That's all I'm asking. You should not take credit for photosynthesis and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good discussion which should be there.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Everyone is trying, to do the best they can within the constraints they have been given. They've been said, go look like this in this direction, and they go look. And we have to just try to find the objective truth if you want to solve the problem honestly.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you all very much. This has been a very stimulating discussion as always. So please come back tomorrow for the climate bathtub model. That'll be the next chapter. And I think there again, I think we had a long discussion with Mike. And this
Thank you,
episode
Dr.
will be
Rao.
repeated again this evening. Yes.
Zullen we eruit gaan?
Ja.
The house is burning, but we're still sitting in the glow. Phones charged, lights on, pretending we don't know. But the forest is silent, the river's running low, and the flame on our plates is the strongest fire we throw. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Echoes and arise, this is your hour. 7 boundaries broken, the earth pushed past the line. Climate, land, species, fresh water, chemicals, nutrients, oceans in decline. Not danger, disaster in real time. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Metafoodians rise, this is your power. And here in India, one truth stands the same. Milk is not just milk, dairy feeds the flame. Cows and methane, fields and forests turn to grain. Politics, culture, carbon, all wired to the same chain. Every cup of curd is heat in the air. Every block of butter is a forest repair. It's not a small habit, it's a planetary affair. Put out the fire, put out the fire. fixes half the hurt, Dr. Rao made that clear. But food fixes the other half, the half that's burning here. Change the plate, change the land, change the future's atmosphere. Put out the fire, put out the fire. Metafoodians unite, this is your choir. Every millet, every fruit, every sapseed, every bean is water on the wildfire of a world we've never seen. Every oil-free bite is a river turning clean. This is not perfection, it's direction. Not pressure, but protection. A week of choices can cool a generation. A company's courage can ignite a nation. Put out the fire, ooh, put out the fire. Echoes and rise, this is your hour. Metafoodians unite, Metafoodians ignite, sharing love in the meta zone, lighting the path to a cooler home. Put out the